I just threw a truck at a dragon. I love my life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel. I am, of course, joined by my two lovely co-hosts, Aaron Muner and Tanner Dykstra. And, of course, they are children in men's bodies. Today, we're here to talk about Shazam, Fury of the Gods. But if you want to talk to us about the latest and greatest entry in the dying DCEU, you can join our Discord. That link is in the top of the description. And way down there, subscribe to this channel because we've got plenty of movie reviews coming out, including the return of Quest. It's coming back. It's coming back for real. None of this nominee horse shit.
Yeah.
We're talking about the best pictures. Yeah. But we got a chance to see Shazam! Fury of the Gods earlier than most people. We saw it at 3:30 on Thursday. That was an early showing. We're here to give our thoughts. Not good thoughts, but thoughts nonetheless. So let's start off with our guest here, Aiden Buhner. Aiden, what did you think of Shazam! Fury of the Gods under the context of that you did not see
I think
the
we
first
should.
film?
I think we should quickly address that we are all in person here,
Yeah.
crammed alongside each other, ready to join in on our negative thoughts on Shazam! Fury of the Gods.
Yep.
Yeah,
Early in the morning, having a bit of a hot cough.
I'm imagining having a hot cough.
mine's over there. I should have grabbed it.
That's okay.
You know what else should have happened?
Better movie.
David Cronenberg, whatever his fucking name was, should have made a better movie.
Yep.
As you said, Tucker, I have never seen the first Shazam, mostly because I think that Shazam is a stupid premise.
Yeah.
So that's already wasn't helping my potential enjoyment of Fear of the Gods. I should also say, by the way, because I'm sure this review will pick up some new people, I'm definitely the biggest DC fan on the couch.
Yeah, that's true.
By a significant margin, but I'm probably the least Shazam! Fury of the Gods enjoyer on this very piece of furniture. As my letterbox said, my letterbox review just says, that's enough.
Yeah.
And that's largely how I feel, because I think that, to be honest, Shazam! Fear of the Gods is not significantly worse than your average to slightly below average comic book movie.
Yeah.
It really isn't. But the problem is, it's 2023.
Yeah.
So I've seen how many of these now.
Yeah.
And so at every point when we hit another trope, we hit another quip, we hit another irreverent reference, it feels like psychological warfare.
Yeah.
And so especially when your film is doing it this poorly, when the product placement is this insane, when your main character is giving such an emotive and peculiar performance as he makes a quip in every single line he has to deliver, I just simply can't take it.
You nailed the Zachary Levi cadence, I think.
Yes.
He's talking a lot like this. Hey guys,
Yeah.
all or nothing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. On top of the fact that there are the garden variety script issues and CGI issues and choreography issues that plague the lion's share of these movies.
Yeah.
I think Shazam! of the Gods is an awful movie.
Yeah.
I completely agree, though. I am more critical on this film as compared to its counterparts, because I do think that there is a different tone here that doesn't work for this film. What made the first Shazam so distinct from its DCEU counterparts is that it was willing to break free from the gritty mold, and that made that film special. The idea of Billy Batson being a child in a male large superhero body was distinct, and I respected it for that. And it is to this day still one of my favorite DCEU movies, because I think it actually does something and captures a different audience. The DCEU is largely like, hey, what if superheroes were dark? Except for, I guess, Wonder Woman 84, like some of them. But Shazam! Fury of the Gods, I think, loses so much of what made that first film distinct that I find it to be a significant decrease in distinctness. Now, doesn't mean there aren't elements of this film that make it very distinct, but they are elements that they could have leaned into more that they do not. Primarily, Shazam and his family from the foster system. The Shazamily.
The Zam fam.
People call them that?
I think they say that in the movie.
I've heard Shazamily a lot of times.
I hate both.
I am copywriting Zam fam right now.
Okay, sure.
I don't know if I came up with that or they said it in the movie.
Retitle the channel.
Zam fam.
The Shazam family, it does make this film distinct in a certain way, having this bunch of kids who all have superpowers together, they're trying to work together. That on itself could be a really compelling parent premise for a distinct superhero movie. However, they stray away from that so often that when some of the kids start losing their powers, when they start splitting up a little bit, when half the characters are incredibly underdeveloped, And that also leads there to be less time for what makes the first film distinct, which is Billy Batson's sort of homework dynamic of him trying to hide that he's a superhero and going to school and dealing with bullying and stuff. Billy Batson, as an Asher Angel's version of that character, is basically not present in this film, which makes it 75, 80, 90% of just Zachary Levi acting like more of a child than Asher Angel ever did. And it makes it grating, it makes it frustrating, it makes him feel like a flat, one-note character. And it was like nails on a chalkboard watching this film. I was frustrated by the writing, I was frustrated by the blandness of it all, how heavily it leads into tropes, how boring the action set pieces were, and I think it's a failure across all fronts.
Tell me how you really feel.
No, I'm hiding it. I'm hiding the truth.
I won't hide the truth any longer. Here, folks. Here, I'm leaning in.
Lean in.
Let me get along the microphone here
Lean
a little bit. Let me get
Send
it
out.
out here. My feelings on Shazam: Fury of the Gods are that I'm really zen about this whole thing now. I think.
Sure.
Whereas Abrams fed up with all the superhero nonsense. I feel like I'm more zen on this one than I typically am about a superhero movie or any movie that I really don't like. And I don't know why that is particularly.
That's okay.
It really I sat there for 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it just washed over me, you know?
Yeah.
And then these fellas come along, and they ask me, hey, be intensely critical. You know, talk about the specifics of what happened and why you don't like Shazam: Fury of the Gods. And my brain's just like, you know, it's whatever. Like, it wasn't good. It was bad.
Yeah.
But, like, do I need to hammer all these nails? Not necessarily. Some of these boards can just have loose nails in them, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point, because it reminds me of part of how I felt when we were back on this very couch for Gray Man last year.
Yeah, fair point.
And Positive Fury.
Well, Positive Fury I fell asleep in, so I couldn't even comment on it.
great, yeah.
I saw probably 20 minutes of that film. I think that at a certain point, as I said before, a lot of my ire for Shazam comes from a sort of industry-wide accumulation.
Sure.
It just so happens to be directed right now into David Sandberg.
Yes.
Andy Sandberg, whatever the fuck made this movie.
Yeah.
David Craddock? Is that how we crack it?
Because, again, I do feel like, look, everything here is an archetype.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, if everything you're hitting is an archetype, it's probably not, on that level alone, awful. You know what I mean? You got the action, you got the quips, you got the big dragon, you got the fucking lore elements. So I see kind of where you're coming from, of there just being a malaise over the entire film.
Yeah.
But to me, that malaise is just becoming very, very tiresome, and it hurts my bones.
Okay.
Too much malaise. It's almost like getting bed sores. You've been in bed for so long.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very familiar
See,
with
it's
those.
easy to lie in bed.
Okay.
But
So-
it's a
so
problem.
allow me to, because I didn't really give any specific thoughts.
Right.
But I'll
Well,
do
the
it.
point
here.
was that you weren't going to.
Well, I'll try. I'll try for
Okay.
our sake here, and,
Sure.
and for your sake, the audience. Let's start with the film's centerpiece. Let's start with Zachary Levi.
Woo!
Let's get specific here. He's returning to the role of Shazam here.
Yeah.
Although I didn't realize that they didn't come down on a name for him in the first movie.
Yeah, they make it a real big bit in this movie, and it's never funny, and then it's not funny for the punchline either.
No, it's not funny when he's like, "Your name is Shazam," and he's like, "Oh." He gets a name, and then there's never going to be another one of these movies. Very real fantastic energy about that, I will say.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say, because I largely want to shit on the film in platitudes, because a lot of my issues with it are overarching, but I do want to also be fair and kind of angle my criticism in a couple particular ways. This is going to be full spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, I feel like at this point, if you're in this and you're like, I'm quite on the fence, don't go see the movie. Don't support this film. It's apparently gonna flop, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. From here on out,
It'll
spoilers.
be on HBO Max soon enough.
Yeah,
Don't worry
well,
about it.
I mean, support it or not, it's going to flop, so who cares?
Yeah.
The post-credit scene to me is a really fantastic encapsulation of why this movie is so grating to me personally. The post-credit scene, in effect, is Zachary Levi being approached by two people who were in Peacemaker, maybe?
Diebeard and Amelia Harcourt.
Yeah, hardcore.
Okay. And
Diebeard.
they're coming
They call 'em.
they're coming to recruit Billy for the Justice Society.
Yes.
Yes.
And
As established in Black Adam.
As we all know, it's a real bold move to tie this film into Black Adam months after that film released.
it's,
In a post-credit scene, no less. You could easily take it out, but they decided not to.
and of course Billy takes umbrage with the name.
Yeah,
And
Justice Society.
and he pulls up his phone And he goes to thesaurus.com.
That's true.
And he starts throwing out options. Why aren't we the Judgment Society? Why aren't we
The Authority Society.
The Authority Society.
The Authority?
Why aren't we Stinger for the Scene? The Avengers Society. Oh, I kind of like that one.
Why does that one stick with me?
Yeah, I like that for some reason.
And this speaks to what I really don't like about a lot of modern blockbusters and superhero films in particular, which is we can never have a moment of earnestness ever. Yeah. And part of the reason why I really like two directors who are at sort of the opposite poles in their approach to superhero media, Zack Snyder and James Gunn in in Guardians 1 and the Suicide Squad, is like Zack Snyder looks at his character and says, I'm going to take you really, really seriously. And I'm going to make a very dark and operatic narrative in your world that believes in you as a character of God and myth. Then you've got James Gunn, who, particularly in Guardians 1, which is a film I love, says, I'm going to take your characters and your moments very seriously and believe in you as people, but we're still going to have plenty of jokes. What a film like Shazam does is says, I don't have any interest in Billy Batson as a person. I have no interest in an emotional arc.
Well, they set up like 4 different possible emotional arcs, and none of them really come to fruition. They're like half-assed near the end.
Yeah, but the larger problem for me is that every single thing is a quip. Yes. Billy Batson is not a vehicle for even a comedic character exploration like Star-Lord might be.
Yeah.
He is a vehicle for making everything into a poorly thought out bit. His resurrection becomes a joke.
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane.
Everything becomes a joke, and it just makes it so hard for me to even want to engage with your story, because clearly, even if it's a labor of love, it's supposed to be goofy because comics are goofy or silly, I get that line of defense, but it needs to mean something. And I don't think that anything in Shazam meant anything.
The resurrection of Billy Batson is what really gets my goat here.
Yeah, sure. I think that's what we're calling this video. The resurrection of Billy Batson.
Because they kill him. Dead. They kill him. He blows himself up in a fucking nuclear explosion inside of a dome.
Though his body's just slightly charred.
Yeah, his body's a little bit charred. Fine. Don't worry about it. And they bury him on like fucking the plane of the gods or some shit. I don't know. And they're all his entire family is standing around his grave.
They bury him in the volume.
They bury him in the volume is what they do. They're standing around his grave, and I'm in my seat in the theater being like, I don't care about Billy Batson, but honestly, good on them for having the balls to kill the main character.
Yeah, and create somewhat of an emotional moment at the end.
Yeah.
I somewhat believe that this family cares about their brother/son. And losing that, like, hey, I don't love these characters, but the death of a family member is something that's rather sobering in a movie such as this that is just spent about 20 minutes before doing a really ham-fisted Skittles commercial saying "Taste the rainbow" to stop the villain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, you know what? Yeah, David F. Sandberg, you made a moment here.
Yeah.
And of course, he doesn't have a gravestone. They just like draw the Shazam logo in the dirt with their finger, which I think is funny. But then they bring in the other god.
No, what happens is, so they're standing around the grave, and they're like, damn, isn't there any way that he can come back? After he's been dead for a while? Like, they brought him to this place, they buried him, they've mourned him a little bit, and then apropos of nothing, they're just like, hey, what about powers and superhero powers and bringing Billy back to life? Any chance of that? And the wizard's like, I'm glad you asked. Because actually, this staff can do all of that, but no gods to give it the magic power to do so. But lo and behold, does a demigod work? Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot shows up. Shazam, Warner Brothers was so in dire need of getting people to see this film that they put the end of the film cameo in the trailers for this film.
Crazy. In
any attempt to generate interest for this film. Wonder Woman shows up. She was teased earlier. They had like the body double or whatever. She's suffering from, this is a deep cut reference, Fan Bingbing in the 355 syndrome, when she is clearly not in the same room as any of these people. Yeah. I was tracking. There is not a single shot where her face is in view, in a shot that is in view of anyone else's face. Right. They do body doubles, they do over the head, they do whatever they need to do. They do really weird over the shoulder shots and stuff like that when her and Zachary Levi are having a conversation. Because she's like, bing bang boom, here's God magic, he's back alive. Fantastic.
And I was mentioning this in a half-heartedly joking way in the car yesterday, is that the film almost feels parodic of its own genre. Mm-hmm. Because you think about the death in Return of Superman, and I hate to be Snyder-pilled here, and I don't
Go
even
right ahead,
chime in.
Abram. We've made peace with it.
But when Superman dies in BVS, not only is that framed as a much more significant loss,
Of course.
we then take when we eventually actually finally release the Justice League in 2021.
Yeah.
we take a good point. We take a good.
Weird that it took him so long.
It took a long
Yeah.
time. It takes a good portion of the film to resurrect Superman, and it means something. It almost feels like we're spoofing on that in Shazam by having him die and be not only brought back by Gal Gadot, but have her be brought back with her guitar riff.
Oh yeah.
And then immediately turn Billy coming back to life, not only into a very comedic. You buried me
we all
already.
scream because we think it's
Zombie.
a zombie. Yeah.
Into
I was surprised we didn't get a dirt rising joke.
yes,
I was surprised.
Yeah.
and then into the spider in the teeth and
Yeah.
everything, and then it goes back to what you were saying also, Tucker, of the I mean, truly. I looked around to try to make eye contact with anyone in our party.
I was too locked in.
Yeah, when the Skittles moment happened.
Yeah.
Because there is a honest to God, I'm talking to you now.
Mm-hmm.
There's an honest to God plot point in this film where to defeat the unnamed and miscellaneous generic goblins that show up in
Yes.
Philadelphia.
Well, if you're familiar with Greek mythology, you got your Cyclopses, you got your Minotaurs, you got your Harpies.
They look
you
awesome.
you got your Manticores.
Oh, Manticore, sorry.
basically, they said they went on Wikipedia, Greek monsters.
Greek monster, yes.
And so to defeat these, we had to get unicorns, because what do monsters hate says our talking pen unicorns.
Yes.
But here's the problem with unicorns. They're really angry and so give them ambrosia. But we have man's ambrosia.
The closest thing to ambrosia we have.
We have the Nestle company's product,
the
Skittles.
closest thing to the food of the gods.
Yeah. Skittles.
And not only is a major plot point in the film feeding literally branded Skittles to...
There's a moment where
Yeah.
we do a long slow-mo shot of the Skittles like being thrown into the air. It's
Yeah.
a long shot. I'm
Yeah.
like, why are we spending so much time on this shot?
And then we say not once, but
Money.
twice, taste the rainbow.
yeah.
It's product placement.
It's pure blatant product placement that
Feels like a joke.
It is throughout this film. Product placement throughout this film, but this one feels especially
Heinous.
heinous. Thank you, Tucker.
Yeah.
That's the word I would use because it's so much of a plot point.
Yes.
It's like a C plot point, but still they make such a point of it. They say the slogan of the company, of the product. It's so blatant, and it just I take psychic damage every time they say it.
It feels like parody.
Yeah.
It feels, as I said in a joking way, it feels like in 10 years we'll reevaluate
Yeah.
Shazam! Fear of the Gods as a deep state satire
Yeah.
for comic book movies.
The other problem with this film, and I think that the miscellaneous goblins are a very good example of it, is I feel like the film is very disjointed in its identity. Is the villains in the first film were smoke monsters, whatever, Mark
They
Strong
were
with an eyeball.
the 7 deadly sins.
No one cares. And they felt out of place, but it made them menacing in the world of Philadelphia. Oh, these don't belong here. That's kind of strange. But this film is so concerned with having variety in its set pieces that we are thrown between mystical realms and things that feel in no way connected to one another. We are in normal Philadelphia, we're in a house, we're in the Hall of Doors, we're in the land of the gods, and these CGI volume-ass places feel like they are just pulled from different movies. One's from Harry Potter, one's from Thor Love and Thunder, one's from fucking Spider-Man Homecoming, and you're like, what's going on here? And then, as we reach the last act of this film, the tropes just come hot and heavy, which is why I was so surprised to see a couple Twitter comments about that the last act of this film is great, because I completely disagree, and that it goes for every possible superhero action movie trope that you can go for. The bad guys clad in metal armor want to find the glowing thing. Of course, one of them betrays the other one.
Laser.
You've got a giant blue sky laser, which I got to pop out of because I think that's funny every time it happens. We've got miscellaneous gray minions coming out of the ground, a la Black Adam. It is such an amalgamation of just nothing, and you feel no emotion. And the characters are split up. They come together, and like that spatially it doesn't make any sense. And then there's a sacrifice and not a sacrifice, and it's just such an amalgam of tropes that I do think this film does worse and more consistently than an average superhero movie. You'll have one or two of those elements. There's usually a goober. There's usually maybe a an army of bad guys like a Chitauri or something like that. But so many of these superhero movies, I think, understand that you can't have all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Shazam is having its cake and eating its too, but it's cake made of like actual human feces. And I'm just so perplexed by the screenwriting here that Abram made a comment about yesterday saying, how did people think this is okay? Like, how did this get past QA of, we know what's going to happen. We know that a joke is coming. We know how it's going to end. There's no suspense. There's no surprise. There's no mystery. And that made the film just insanely boring and painfully uninteresting to watch until I was cringing in a bad way, because I think this is the cringiest written superhero movie I've ever seen. It feels so much like 45-year-old, 50-year-old men in a boardroom are trying to recreate Zoomer speak, actions, TikTok references, music references, some of which are out of date. It doesn't even make sense from the tone of what the movie is going for, trying to appeal to children, trying to have Billy feel like an actual person. It's just a mess.
Now we had to do a quick hot swap for Abram Coffee, but I'm going to attempt to be positive, if only for a fleeting moment, about Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Okay, because again, you guys have been saying all these things, and I agree.
Yes,
I agree. You know, it is. I think it's largely a thing of the focus group thing. Interests me because I think a lot of what they probably said was good enough.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's bottom line. It's not clearing any hurdles. It's just whatever. Yeah, sure, put it out. Who cares? But I said I was going to be positive, and now I'm going to say things that I like about Shazam: Fear of the Gods. I like Jack Dylan Grazer. I think I think there's a certain charm about him, personal issues notwithstanding, with Jack Dylan Grazer. Okay. I think there's a certain charm about him. I think that he's probably the closest thing to the heart of this film, because
certainly not Billy.
It's certainly not Billy, because we never really see Billy. We see Shazam. But with him, I think he has this sort of interesting thing where he is very clearly compensating for his physical and social disabilities. He's sort of an awkward teen, as they try to relate to you so many times.
Oh yeah.
But he compensates for that with being a superhero. And he goes out and does superhero stuff on his own. He's obsessed with superheroes, all this good stuff. And by stripping his powers away for a majority of the film, I think it nears on examining that. It never fully does, but I can see what they were going for, but they dropped the baton at the handoff into the third act, I think. But they also give him the relationship with Rachel Zegler, who I think is fine in this. Yeah. She probably wasn't swinging for any home runs here. There was a very funny red carpet moment that went viral about yesterday, where at the premiere she said, I took the Shazam: Fury of the Gods role because I needed the job.
Yep.
Get that bag, Rachel. And
small one, unfortunately.
It was probably a small bag, but a bag nonetheless. And the other thing I wanted to say was, another thing that this film sort of like flirts with doing and examining, but never really does, is the Zam fam, the Shazamily, if you will. I think it's an interesting concept for a superhero story.
Yeah.
Which
kind of power pack-esque.
Yeah, exactly. We set it up at the end of Shazam 2019, and here we're already thrown into strife with it. I don't think we ever really get a moment where it's working out.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get told that, we used to be this like superhero team family, but now everyone wants to do their own thing, and I'm the one trying to keep it together.
Great moment there. Yeah, of course.
I think it's an interesting moment. I like that they have a layer, that everyone has their own thing. Eugene is like mapping out the room of doors, but of course none of this is examined in any meaningful or any meaningful way, substantive way. But nonetheless, I do think they're fun ideas, and I'm sounding a lot like Tucker Hazel here, where I'm like, the concept alone, good stuff.
Yes.
Execution-wise, not so good.
This is Tan, this is why I do think that if I remove myself from the picture in large part, again, it goes back to my idea that I just don't think it's that far off from a lot of its contemporaries.
Sure.
Because I think you're right. I think there's a lot of cool iconography here in particular. Mm-hmm. And while you're right, Tucker, that it's sort of, what does it add up to? I don't know. I do like the places we visit.
Yeah.
And the mystical dungeons, and then the Hall of Doors, and the pen for whatever his name's Steve, because everything has to be a joke. But the pen that is writing for them, and seeing the house and the lair and Philadelphia, because usually we're in New York, right, or something like that. So I do think that it hits a lot of the right beats. It's just there's nothing to them. It's an amalgam of ideas,
Yes,
and
yes.
they just don't stick together. And it makes it hard to even generate more things to talk about because what is there even more to really say?
Yeah.
Well, I want to say the other side of the coin of what he was bringing up, because I do
Yeah.
agree about these ideas being what makes this film distinct, but I think it loses its own identity, as I mentioned at the beginning. But for the primary reason of there's too many characters to keep track of in this movie, and even at a 2-hour 10 runtime, which God, it feels longer than that. There's not enough time to make all these characters feel interesting, and I think that it's because we have to deal with 3 other villains.
Yeah,
here.
that's true.
And
Didn't want them at all.
and the fact that we have 3 villains that also have a family dynamic and a history we got to learn about, and then trying to balance Billy and Mary and Freddie being like kind of the main characters, and then Darla and Eugene, like there's some of them that get basically no development or screen time, and some of them feel like background characters in a way, and then we start stripping them away, but we still kind of want to keep them around. So whenever there's a wide shot, it's like 20 characters and they're all standing next to each other, and it makes the film feel bloated. And like the dynamic between Billy and Freddie was the heart of that first film. Them experimenting with superhero powers, understanding that they have this bond that is, I think, completely lost in this film because we're trying to build bonds between everyone. We want to make the group of 6 heroes feel important, and their relationship with their parents who only show up a few times. And Freddy's got this thing with the wizard we haven't even mentioned, and Rachel Zegler, and she's got 2 sisters, and it's too much. It's too much. And I think that something that I have learned to appreciate about some of these team films, primarily, and I think 2 of the films that do it best, the original Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, is that they recognize that villains can be sacrificed. Complex villains can be sacrificed for the betterment of the things you care about, where the strengths lie, which is our group of heroes. Their dynamic, their individual development, making them feel distinct. You feel that about the 5 of the 6 Avengers, about everyone on the Guardians team. You understand these characters. You want to see more of them. And that's because Loki and Ronan are nothing sandwich generic characters. But I think that's okay, and I think that they really should have leaned into that in this, where the first film had a generic-ass nothing sandwich bad guy that let Billy and Freddy and the Shazam dynamic blossom and be kind of interesting. But now it's like, oh, we got to be constantly cutting back and forth of the wizard and Freddy and the 3 sisters sitting in a CGI-ass throne room, and then Billy's off doing his own thing. He's trying to keep the family together, and it's like there's too many plot lines going on here. There's too many characters, too many dynamics, too many relationships, and none of them get the air they need to fulfill the potential that they have.
To put a bow on it, because I think we should wrap it up here. To put a bow on it, I will say that I saw another Twitter blurb review of this that was positive, more positive than I am, that used the word innocent with this film, and
In what respect?
in the respect that like it's not overtly, I don't know, denigrating, or there's nothing like overtly bad about it. Like it's just for me, I think I hit the nail on the head for my personal thoughts when I said it's just good enough. It's not clearing any hurdles. It's not doing anything special. It's just kind of going through the motions. And I think in that respect, it is innocent. It's not trying anything. It's not a Black Adam where it's like a vanity project for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or anything of that nature. Okay. And that's why I come down on it like softer than you guys, frankly. I think it's just a nothing film. Like you guys said it felt longer than 2 hours 10 minutes. I'm like, it kind of breezed by for me just because I wasn't really climbing onto anything. I wasn't really feeling anything. I was just like, yeah, this is happening. And maybe that's an indictment of the film, more of an indictment of the film than I'm like giving it discredit for.
Yeah.
But for those reasons, I'm gonna give this film like a 4.8 out of 10, just because it's whatever. You know, there are things that I enjoyed about it, but it's very clearly still a bad film.
I think what I'll say to make one final response and tie it into where I close. To your point, Tucker, I don't think we needed more time for these characters because they're all simple. And superhero movies are basically, in my opinion, 85-90% of them are just about plot. And so you got 3 villains, right? But you got the sister who's power hungry, thinks she knows everything. You got the sister who feels scorned. You got the sister who feels like guilty.
Sure.
boom, that's it right there. You got the Shazam guy who wants to keep everyone together. You got the Shazam guy who wants to be better than his superhero self. You got the Shazam girl who feels awkward because he's older than the other ones. You got the one that's kind of comedic relief because she's young in an adult woman's body. And you got the one.
You have the other two.
I didn't even know there were two more of them.
Yeah.
But so my feeling is it's fine. And Tucker and Tanner, you're right. You got a plot, you got pieces. The pieces move. It's complicated enough for you to see different locations and set pieces, and things happen, and there's action, and there's ideas. And you said there's no identity. I think there's a very clear identity. The superhero movie.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so annoyed with this film in particular, because I just had to see Ant-Man Quantumania. and that's where I come down on it. You're right, Tanner.
Yeah.
If I were to step outside of myself, this film is a 4, 5. It's fine. It's whatever. But I have no obligation to be objective.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for me, this is just more accumulating damage in a genre that I love, but feels so corporate and mass-produced and disinteresting to me.
This
90%
is
of
the
time.
biggest offender I've ever seen of a superhero movie with product placement, though. So from that angle, that is leagues beyond what we've seen.
All I'm gonna say is you motherfuckers should have respected Zack Snyder when he was making these movies. 2 out of 10.
Well, apparently he's coming back.
No, it's
Lord
probably-
Darkseid, ring a ding ding.
Ring a ding ding.
If only.
If only. Tucker,
Yeah.
what do you think? What's your score?
I really hate this movie. I think that this is just marginally better than I think the worst DCEU film, which is Black Adam, which is just an indictment of the current era that we're living through of these goddamn films.
Flash and Aquaman and Blue Beetle still coming, baby.
Still soon.
3 more this year.
Yeah. But I really don't like this movie, and I think that any of its redeeming elements are immediately squandered by missed potential, bad jokes, bad editing, very bad editing in this film. Lots of insert shots to like cover things, or like ADR in the background, like pan out from a couple people having a conversation, and you'll hear the conversation like peter away. Like, oh, that was like weird backfilled ADR with like just reading a line in someone's bathroom. And which is I feel sometimes in moments of other films, but I feel like this one, it was prevalent throughout. And for me, it's gonna get a 3.3 out of 10. I think this movie is terrible.
Can I just say, Flash is what we need, because Flash, if nothing else, is gonna swing for the fences.
That's
Sure.
true.
And-
I think out of necessity, it's a swing for the fences.
And for me, again, I think this film is awful because of what it sort of stands in as. Flash will be awful or excellent by its own merit. That's what I mean to say.
Okay. Flash will be more unique than this film.
Flash will
be more unique than
Flash
this
will
film.
fail by its own shortcomings.
Yeah.
By having 2 Ezras and fucking
7 Batmans.
uninterested Michael Keaton
Supergirls.
back.
Apparently, Ben Affleck said that his Batman is only in the film for 5 minutes.
That's not a surprise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because Bale's gonna have the rest of the screen time.
Because, yeah, that's right. They're certainly bringing Christian Bale back for this travesty.
Yikes. Okay.
I think it's gonna be great.
Well, DCEU crumbling before our very eyes, as it has been for almost its entire existence.
We're witnessing the 2023 is the year of the death rattle of the DCEU, and we're gonna review all of them, aren't we?
If I can just share one more thought, 'cause I know
One
we're
more
trying
time. Okay, here we go.
Again, this film to me, and Tucker, you made an interesting point. This is a larger conversation, but I'm just gonna tack it in here at the end.
Okay.
You're like, every DC movie has to be dark and gritty. I don't even think that's been true for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's been true since the first Shazam. Or maybe Aquaman, even.
Yeah, I think
Because-
Aquaman
because
probably.
Even, yeah, sure, this Suicide Squad is bloody, but they're making cock jokes all the time.
Yeah.
And
This
Birds
one
of...
will be better with that.
And, sure. And Birds of Prey is also
No, that's true,
fairly
sure.
whimsical.
Yeah.
People have this image in their head of this movie, oh, it's the antidote to the DC darkness. Brother, the DC darkness was the only thing making that
There's
universe
what,
distinct.
like 3 DC darkness
Yeah.
gritty films?
It's complete
And
fucking nonsense. You all don't know what you're talking about. I'm not talking to you two. I'm talking to you out there. All I'm saying is the only way that this universe could have worked, and I stand by this, and every time I've seen another one of these fucking movies, it becomes more and more true. The only way that this universe would have worked is if you wrote it out with Snyder. I maintain that.
at least he was doing something different than what Marvel was doing.
Yeah,
And the subsequent DC films have all been trying to do what Marvel was doing.
Yes.
And as Marvel movies begin to stumble at the finish line, or we're well into stumbling before the finish line now that is getting worse and worse. It's having a worse and worse ripple effect. But nonetheless, we'll watch all those movies opening weekend, and we'll be here to review them for your viewing pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Brands.
We'll see you next time.
2 out of 10.